Hey, so what's good, YouTube? Welcome to my channel. So on this one, I just want to speak about the similarities that I've come to find between the Pharisees of old and narcissism. It led me to the belief that the Pharisees were the very first narcissists, and I'm going to explain some of the ways. And also, I just want to add that as human beings, we all have a degree of narcissism, and some of it is healthy. But once you go too far out on the spectrum, then it becomes unhealthy and even toxic. And that's when it becomes a problem. And also, with the whole thing about Pharisees, it's good to note that all of us, even Christians, can fall prey or can succumb to the spirit of Pharisees. We can also be found to be a Pharisee. So it's just good to constantly check our hearts and remain obedient. So with that being said, I'm gonna start from the first one. Like, basically, who were the Pharisees? They were self-righteous. They were the teachers of the law in Jesus's time. They were superior, upright, self-righteous, and learned men, basically like know-it-alls. And the Bible tells us that they had a religious spirit. So that's a very bad spirit to have. And then also we know that the Pharisees were hypocrites. Jesus called them a brood of vipers and compared them to Satan, calling them hypocrites. Now, actually, hypocrites in the olden day, or even today, actually, hypocrites means actors. So it's actors who pretend for some time to be quite a different person. They can pretend for some time to play a certain role in church, that they're holy and what have you, but then later on you see a different person. So this is quite similar to a narcissist. And then also, another thing about the Pharisees, the Bible tells us they were motivated by jealousy and hatred. And Bible says they went out and conspired against Jesus as to how they might destroy him. And this was because they were jealous of what Jesus could do. And you find that narcissists sometimes tend to be jealous of your spiritual gifts or whatever is going well for you. And yeah. Another way that I found is that the Pharisees of old had an attitude of righteousness. So basically, they were known to be keepers of the law. But it was just a mask which hid the inner world of their wickedness and ungodly thoughts and feelings. We hear the Bible speak of they were like whitewashed tombs with dead man's bones inside. So the tomb looks all nice and pristine white, but inside, and we know that it's man who looks on the outside, but God who looks on the inside. So God sees the heart. Another way that I found is that the Pharisees seek honor from men instead of seeking honor from God. And the story here is also, I think you've heard it, of a certain Pharisee, it said, who would pray aloud at in the street corners, basically out in public where everyone could see him. And this is just to get honor of man. Another way is that the Pharisees would live off another's reputation, and they called father Abraham, their father, which was so. However, they would use his goodness and his faithfulness, basically, all the beautiful character traits of Abraham, and they would claim that by association. Basically, just like mingling with good people or holy people doesn't make you good or holy, but that was the mindset of the Pharisees of the time. Actually, zero holiness, but just by association or connection, they want that trait instead of doing the actual work to develop that trait in yourself. So another way is that they would the mix basically with the in crowd, with the holy crowd. And the Bible tells us that they actually criticized Jesus because he would hang out with sinners. Jesus was a friend of sinners. He went to the home. There's stories in the Bible where he went to the homes of sinners and shared the gospel. So this is another similarity. Like the narcissists basically love to be in the it crowd. I don't know if you can relate. But also, the Pharisees were very critical, the Bible tells us, of small matters. They were very much for rules and regulations, which they themselves, defined. They defined. And we know that God alone is the lawgiver. It's Him who defines rules and what have you, not a man. So also we see that these Pharisees cared for their donkeys and animals, basically, but not a sick man, not a human. And you know the story of when Jesus healed the man on the Sabbath day, the sick man, and they took fault in this. They found fault in this. Whereas if it had been one of their donkeys, they would have rescued the donkey, Sabbath day or not, basically. So very critical of small matters and like rules, but also putting it on you, but not willing to even be obedient to the same rules. There's a saying that says that they put heavy burdens. Basically, it says they are not willing to enter into the kingdom, but they put heavy burdens on those who are willing to enter, basically. So there's that about the Pharisees. And also, they hate hearing others being praised aloud in public. Like when Jesus entered Jerusalem and there was crowds of children there screaming, shouting, singing, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David. This really irked the Pharisees and they became indignant. The Bible tells us that story can be found in Matthew 21 and 15. And it's similar to narcissists as well because they don't want any light or any praise to be on anyone else but them. Another thing I found similarity between the Pharisees and the narcissists is that their eyes are haughty, the Bible tells us. This are the Pharisees, and full of adultery. So basically, they are converted, but they haven't cleansed their spirit fully. And as a result, even after 20 years of being converted, their eyes are still flirtatious. They still have that sin that they entered into the kingdom with. So basically, we know that this is a result of having the knowledge but not being obedient. Not being obedient. And another similarity is that, you know, the Pharisees were known to twist Jesus is good for bad. And we know that there's a story when Jesus cast out a demon from a man, and the Pharisees were really disturbed by this. And they said he does this in or by the power of Beelzebul. Now, Beelzebul was the ruler or the head of demons. That was his name. So they were very suspicious and critical of Jesus, and they were actually, it was very rude and hurtful of them to call the Son of God the head ruler of demons. Imagine that. So they found, just like narcissists, of carelessly judging others. And we know that they also like to trip you up, take your words out of context. And this is also what they did to Jesus. They took his words out of context, and they later accused him of heresy, and that was also the reason why he was crucified. Pharisees also, just like narcissists, are easily offended by any words of correction or rebuke. We see the story in Matthew 15, 12, and 14, whereby the Pharisees here were offended by Jesus' words, his words of rebuke. And Jesus's reply was just to leave them alone, like basically don't bother with them. And it's so funny because also in dealing with narcissists, we find that going no contact helps very much in this regard. So that's quite similar. Also, we find that narcissists, like the Pharisees, are spiritually blind. It's like basically the blind leading the blind. And the story in Matthew 15:14 tells us that if a blind man leads a blind, they will both fall into the pit. So basically, there is no spiritual vision here. So I really said a lot. But yeah, so basically, these are some of the similarities, and this just warms my heart to know that truly Jesus experienced everything we have. Like that's how he's able to be an intercessor on our behalf, because truly he also experienced narcissism. So if you're dealing with that, you're not alone, and there is hope. And as I did my research for this one, I must shout out the sisterhoodhub.com, because that's where I got a lot of my resources. They have wonderful resources there. So if you want any more on this topic, you can check out the sisterhoodhub.com. And if you like, comment, subscribe. This is me finding my higher voice, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.